Section 3. The Holiday of the Slave. I have sometimes suggested that industrialism of the American type, with its machinery and mechanical hustle, will someday be preserved on a truly American model. I mean, in the manner of the Red Indian Reservation. As we leave a patch of forest for savages to hunt and fish in, so a higher civilization might leave a patch of factories for those who are still at such a stage of their intellectual infancy as really to want to see the wheels go round. And as the Red Indians could still, I suppose, tell their quaint old legends of a red god who smoked the pipe or a red hero who stole the sun and moon, so the simple folk, in their industrial enclosure, could go on talking of their own outline of history and discussing the evolution of ethics, while all around them a more mature civilization was dealing with real history and serious philosophy. I hesitate to repeat this fancy here, for, after all, machinery is their religion, or at any rate superstition, and they do not like it to be treated with levity. But I do think there is something to be said for the notion of which this fancy might stand as a sort of symbol, for the idea that a wiser society would eventually treat machines as it treats weapons is something special and dangerous, and perhaps more directly under a central control. But however this may be, I do think the wildest fancy of a manufacturer kept at bay like a painted barbarian is much more sane than a serious scientific alternative now often put before us. I mean what its friends call the leisure state, in which everything is to be done by machinery. It is only right to say a word about this suggestion in comparison with our own. In practice, we already know what is meant by a holiday in a world of machinery and mass production. It means that a man, when he is done turning a handle, has a choice of certain pleasures offered to him. He can, if he likes, read a newspaper and discover with interest how the Crown Prince of Fontarabia landed from the magnificent yacht Atlantis amid a cheering crowd, how certain great American millionaires are making great financial consolidations, how the modern girl is a delightful creature, in spite of, or because of, having shingled hair or short skirts, and how the true religion, for which we all look to the churches, consists of sympathy and social progress and marrying, divorcing, or burying everybody without reference to the precise meaning of the ceremony. On the other hand, if he prefers some other amusement, he may go to the cinema, where he will see a very vivid and animated scene of the crowds cheering the Crown Prince of Fontarabia after the arrival of the yacht Atlantis, where he will see an American film featuring the features of American millionaires, with all those resolute contortions of visage which accompany their making of great financial consolidations, where there will not be lacking a charming and vivacious heroine, recognizable as a modern girl by her short hair and short skirts, and possibly a kind and good clergyman, if any, who explains in dumb show, with the aid of a few printed sentences, that true religion is social sympathy in progress and marrying and burying people at random. But suppose the man's taste to be detached from the drama and from the kindred art, he may prefer the reading of fiction, and he will have no difficulty in finding a popular novel about the doubts and difficulties of a good and kind clergyman slowly discovering that true religion consists of progress and social sympathy, with the assistance of a modern girl whose shingled hair and short skirts proclaim her indifference to all fine distinctions about who should be buried and who divorced. Nor, probably, will the story fail to contain an American millionaire making vast financial consolidations and certainly a yacht and perhaps a crown prince. But there are yet other tastes that are catered for under the conditions of modern publicity and pleasure-seeking. There is the great institution of wireless or broadcasting, and the holiday maker, turning away from fiction and journalism and film drama, may prefer to listen in to a program that will contain the very latest news of great financial consolidations made by American millionaires, which will most probably contain little lectures on how the modern girl can crop her hair or abbreviate her skirts, in which he can hear the very accents of some great popular preacher proclaiming to the world that revelation of true religion, which consists of sympathy and social progress rather than of dogma and creed, and in which he will certainly hear the very thunder of cheering which welcomes His Royal Highness the Crown Prince of Fontarabia when he lands from the magnificent yacht Atlantis. There is thus indeed a very elaborate and well-ordered choice placed before him in the matter of the means of entertainment, But even the rich variety of method and approach unfolded before us in this alternative seems to some to cover a certain secret and subtle element of monotony. Even here the pleasure-seeker may have that weird psychological sensation of having known the same thing before. There seems to be something recurrent about the type of topic, suggestive of something rigid about the type of mind. Now I think it very doubtful whether it is really a superior mind. If the pleasure-seeker himself were really a pleasure-maker for himself, if he were forced to amuse himself instead of being amused, if he were, in short, obliged to sit down in an old tavern and talk, I am really very doubtful about whether he would confine his conversation entirely to the Crown Prince of Fontarabia, the shingling of hair, the greatness of certain rich Yankees, and so on, and then begin the same round of subjects all over again. His interests might be more local, but they would be more lively. His experience of men more personal, but more mixed. His likes and dislikes more capricious, but not quite so easily satisfied. To take a parallel, modern children are made to play public school games, and will doubtless soon be made to listen to the praise of the millionaires on the wireless and in the newspaper. But children left to themselves almost invariably invent games of their own, dramas of their own, often whole imaginary kingdoms and commonwealths of their own. In other words, they produce, until the competition of monopoly kills their production. The boy playing at robbers is not liberated, but stunted by learning about American crooks, all of one pattern less picturesque than his own. He is psychologically undercut, undersold, dumped upon, frozen out, flooded, swamped, and ruined, but not emancipated. Inventions have destroyed invention. The big modern machines are like big guns, dominating and terrorizing a whole stretch of country, within the range of which nothing can raise its head. There is far more inventiveness to the square yard of mankind than can ever appear under that monopolist's terror. The minds of men are not so much alike as the motor cars of men, or the morning papers of men, or the mechanical manufacture of the coats and hats of men. In other words, we are not getting the best out of men. We are certainly not getting the most individual or the most interesting qualities out of men, and it is doubtful whether we ever shall, until we shut off this deafening din of megaphones that drowns their voices, this deathly glare of limelight which kills the colours of their complexion, this plangent yell of platitudes which stuns and stops their minds. All this sort of thing is killing thoughts as they grow, as a great white death ray might kill plants as they grow. When, therefore, people tell me that making a great part of England rustic and self-supporting would mean making it rude and senseless, I do not agree with them, and I do not think they understand the alternative or the problem. Nobody wants all men to be rustics, even in normal times. It is very tenable that some of the most intelligent would turn to the towns even in normal times. But I say the towns themselves are the foes of intelligence in these times. I say the rustics themselves would have more variety and vivacity than is really encouraged by these towns. I say it is only by shutting off this unnatural noise and light that men's minds can begin again to move and to grow. Just as we spread paving stones over different soils without reference to the different crops that might grow there, so we spread programs of platitudinous plutocracy over souls that God made various and simpler societies have made free. If by machinery saving labour and therefore producing leisure be meant the machinery that now achieves what is called mass production, I cannot see any vital value in the leisure because there is in that leisure nothing of liberty. The man may only work for an hour with his machine-made tools, but he can only run away and play for 23 hours with machine-made toys. Everything he handles has to come from a huge machine that he cannot handle. Everything must come from something to which, in the current capitalist phrase, he can only lend a hand. Now, as this would apply to intellectual and artistic toys as well as to merely material toys, it seems to me that the machine would dominate him for a much longer time than his hand had to turn the handle. It is practically admitted that much fewer men are needed to work the machine. The answer of the mechanical collectivists is that though the machine might give work to the few, it could give food to the many. But it could only give food to the many by an operation that had to be presided over by the few. Or even if we suppose that some work, subdivided into small sections, were given to the many, That system of rotation would have to be ruled by a responsible few, and some fixed authority would be needed to distribute the work as much as to distribute the food. In other words, the officials would very decidedly be permanent officials. In a sense, all the rest of us might be intermittent or occasional officials, but the general character of the system would remain, and whatever else it is like, nothing can make it like a population pottering about in its own several fields, or practicing small creative crafts in its own little workshops. The man who has helped to produce a machine-made article may indeed leave off working, in the sense of leaving off turning one particular wheel. He may have an opportunity to do as he likes, insofar as he likes using what the system likes producing. He may have a power of choice, in the sense that he may choose between one thing it produces and another thing it produces. He may choose to pass his leisure hours in sitting in a machine-made chair, or laying on a machine-made bed, or resting in a machine-made hammock, or swinging on a machine-made trapeze. But he will not be in the same position as a man who carves his own hobby horse out of his own wood, or his own hobby out of his own will. For that introduces another principle or purpose, which there is no warrant for supposing will coexist with the principle or purpose of using all the wood so as to save labour, or simplifying all the wills so as to save leisure. If our ideal is to produce things as rapidly and easily as possible, we must have a definite number of things that we desire to produce. If we desire to produce them as freely and variously as possible, we must not at the same time try to produce them as quickly as possible. I think it most probable that the result of saving labour by machinery would be then what it is now, only more so, the limitation of the type of thing produced, standardization. Now it may be that some of the supporters of the leisure state have in mind some system of distributed machinery, which shall really make each man the master of his machine, and in that case I agree that the problem becomes different, and that a great part of the problem is resolved. There would still remain the question of whether a man with a free soul would want to use a machine upon about 3/4 of the things for which machines are now used. In other words, there would remain the whole problem of the craftsman in the sense of the creator. But I should agree that if the small man found his small mechanical plant helpful to the preservation of his small property, its claim would be very considerable. But it is necessary to make it clear that if the holidays provided for the mechanic are provided as mechanically as at present, and with the merely mechanical alternatives offered at present, I think that even the slavery of his labour would be light compared to the grinding slavery of his leisure.